forward. Let's get started. So tonight our speaker, her name is Jody Bailey, and she has a master's in library and information science from Wayne State University that she got in 2008. She's currently the director of publishing at the University of Texas at Arlington. She's been there for several years. And just next month, she's going to start a new position as the head of scholarly communications at Emory University. So that's an exciting transition for her. And she has interests in that she's developed over the years in open access publishing, open educational resources, copyright and authors' rights, user-centered library services, and also outreach. Her previous experience that contributed to her knowledge in this area, she worked for over 10 years as a copy editor of books and journal articles, mainly for the American Library Association, but other places as well. So she has some great perspective with the commercial industry and was able to bring that to the academic environment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let me just, all right.
All right. Thank you so much, Peja. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome, thanks. So I'll just make one tiny little correction. You said
Sure,
that I worked for American Library Association.
Oh.
It was actually the American Psychological Association.
Right. Sorry about that. Yes.
No problem. I came to libraries not really knowing much about libraries, so I did not work for ALA before. But thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me here to speak with you all. I'm really excited, and I hope you have lots of questions, and don't feel shy about asking questions, either during the presentation or afterward. Either is fine. I have my chat window open, so I should be able to see chat. If you guys do have a question, you can pop it in there, or you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask any questions you like. As Paige just said, I'm the Director of Publishing at UTA, University of Texas at Arlington Libraries, and I will soon be moving over to Emory University. I have both of my email addresses here, so if you do have questions, either tomorrow or a month from now, you're welcome to email me at either address, just remembering that I won't be at Emory until after November 19th. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started. It's not wanting to forward the slide for me, Peja. Oh, there, it's just lagging. All right.
Just a little bit of a delay, I think. Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe it would be better if you just forward them.
Okay, sure.
Do you want to do that? Okay, I'm going to give the control back to you then.
Sure.
So it seems like it's just really laggy.
Okay.
Okay, so can you go back to the second slide?
Yes.
I'm just seeing a star is all I see.
One moment.
Sure.
Is this the one?
Okay, yes. So this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. Oops, there we go.
Yes.
All right, now we've got the outline. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about these topics. Why libraries publish. So why would libraries even get involved in this? This is not something that's sort of traditionally been within our wheelhouse. So we're going to talk about that kind of briefly, but I thought it was important to at least touch on it. And then the next topic is publishing tools, then publishing platforms, publishing services, and we'll talk briefly about preservation at the end. And I'm hoping that I'm going to try to aim to be finished by around 8:30 my time, not 8:30 your time. So around in about a half hour. So there's plenty of time for questions. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, and maybe the next one. That's just an interstitial one. Okay, here we go. So probably everybody has heard of the cereals crisis, but just in case you haven't, you can look at this graph on the left-hand side of the page of the slide, and this is from the Association of Research Libraries. It's showing trends in expenditures in ARL libraries. So this is specific to those ARL libraries. It's not all libraries. But from 1986 to 2015, what they term ongoing resource expenditures, which is formerly called cereals, went up 521%. And you can look at, so that's that top line that's kind of got the light green color to it with the circles on it. And you can look at the red line with the red boxes to see that is the consumer price index. So in that same time period, the consumer price index went up 118%, but the ongoing research expenditures went up 521%. So this is a huge problem for libraries. It's really breaking our budgets. And this is really, all of these expenditures are contingent on the business model of scholarly communications, particularly with journal publishing. And that business model is such that basically you and I and all of the faculty we work with and many of the graduate students we work with, or that you will be working with as librarians, we all, want to publish journal articles. So we do this research. If we're a scientist, we might do research in a lab. If we're librarians, we might do research with users. But however we do research, we do the research, we do all of this work, we write up that research, and then we submit it to a journal. And most frequently with traditional journals, at least, we have to sign over the copyright to that work to the journal in order to be published by the journal. So most of the large multinational conglomerate corporations, for-profit corporations, I'll point out, that publish journals are, they get all of this content from researchers without having to pay for it. We give it away. And then they add some value to that content by making it look really nice. And sometimes, but not always, they copy edit it. They set up a website to host the content so that people can access it online. They ensure it gets indexed in all of the EBSCO databases as well as all of the other databases, right? And then they sell it back to us. So the business model is we give away the work that we do to these for-profit publishers in many cases. Not all of them are for-profit, but many of them are. And then they sell it back to libraries at huge cost. The Elsevier is the largest publisher of academic journals in the world. And in 2017, they had a profit margin of 36%, which was higher profit margin than Apple or Google. Not more money, but a higher profit margin. But they literally are making billions of dollars a year off the backs of scholars and libraries. And we can't afford it anymore. Believe me, I've worked in libraries for 10 years, and I can tell you that our budget does not go up to meet the incredible increases in costs we see every year for ongoing resources or serials, databases, and journals. These increases show no signs of stopping or slowing. So in the early 2000s, this serials crisis, as people started to call it, led to the open access movement. People just started thinking about, we have the internet now. Why are we still relying on these corporate publishers to get stuff out for us? It's a lot easier to publish now than it was when everything had to be, typeset and then printed in a much more old-fashioned sort of process. So open access sort of became a thing that people started talking about it. The Budapest Open Access Initiative, which was probably the first really well-known meeting that had to do with open access, and it led to sort of a declaration about open access. It was in 2001 or 2, I believe. So when librarians started thinking about open access and how beneficial it could be to our business, it really led to us wanting to have much more control over scholarly communications in general. And that has led in turn to library publishing programs. And I really recommend strongly that if you're interested in working in library publishing, that you can take a look at the Library Publishing Directory, which is published annually by the Library Publishing Coalition, for more information about what kinds of libraries are publishing, engaging in publishing activities, and what kinds of publishing they're doing. So let's move on. And we'll start to talk a little bit about tools. So one of the things that I want to talk about with tools is the first things that I say to a potential client or publishing partner, as we call them. So when someone contacts me and says, hey, you know, I heard that you guys offer publishing services in the library and I'm kind of interested in publishing something. These are the first two things I say, because these are our deal breakers. If people aren't willing to go along with the fact that we are an open access publisher and we are a digital publisher, then that's sort of the end of the conversation. Those are the two things that we will not change about our business model. We don't charge our campus community for any of the services we provide. And we haven't yet tried to start providing services for people outside of our campus community. But for those within the community, we do not charge, and that's for graduate students and faculty. But we also aren't going to change our business model, and these are really our core principles. Everything must be open access, and all publications must be digital. We do not provide a print product. We are not a printing press. And we can move on. So the next step for a journal publishing, somebody who approaches me wanting to publish a journal, is first I need to establish who they are. If they are a faculty member, that's totally fine. Then we can move forward and start talking about what it is that they want to do. If they are a student, I need to find out from them what faculty member would sponsor this project. They need to be they should be associated with a student organization, a registered student organization on our campus. And there should be a faculty advisor for that organization, because you know, as you all well know, you're graduate students, you are going to be graduating soon. You're not going to be at San Jose State University for the next 10 years to run a journal. So we need to have someone who can provide continuity, and that would be a faculty advisor, and who can ensure that there are going to be students in the future who would want to engage in continuing with the journal. It takes a lot of time and effort for us to set up a journal, and we don't want to do that if it's only going to publish 1 or 2 issues. So I'm not going to go through all of the information on this slide. It's just to give you an idea of what is on the journal publishing proposal that I ask our publishing partners to fill out if they're interested in publishing a journal. It's just to give me a really good idea of what kind of support they have. And it also is something that really prompts them to think very seriously about how much time and effort is going to be involved on their part. So it's sometimes people think, oh, it'd be fun to start a journal, and they don't really realize how much work it is. So having to think about all of the things involved in this proposal, and you can move to the next slide, Paisha, because it continues on the next slide. So having to think about everything involved in publishing a journal really does prompt them to take it, I think, a little bit more seriously. And we do definitely want to know that they have thought about these things, that they realize they're going to need an editorial board, and they might even need a co-editor. And then you see here on this slide that I asked them provide a lot of information if there's a title that's already in publication. so that I know, I know something about the history of the journal, how long it's been around, and so forth and so on. We've had a couple of journals come to our publishing program that have been published for a while. One of them is published for 20 years before it came to us, but it was never digital. It was only published in print. If you can imagine, even up to 2016, they were still only publishing in print. And they really wanted to modernize and update the journal. So it was a lot of fun working with them, not only flipping it from a subscription base to an open access, and you'll often hear that term flipping a journal used when they're talking about going from a paid access journal to an open access journal. Not only flipping it to open access, but also taking it from paper only into the digital age. And then another journal we're going to be working with soon, we'll be publishing this one starting next year, but I'm working on an agreement right now with the editor, is that journal has been published since 2005 in digital form only. So it just varies from title to title. And we can move on to the next slide. The next thing I talk about is I usually, if we're in agreement at this point that we still want to publish a journal, then and we sort of gotten all the information that I need, then I usually draw up a memorandum of understanding. As I point out here on the slide, it's not a legal contract, but it is a signed agreement, and it's signed by one of our associate deans as well as our publishing partner on campus. That allows us to really establish what the roles and responsibilities are going to be for those of us who work in the library publishing program, as well as the external publishing partner and anybody they're working with. Often we have the publishing partner that we're working with on campus may have a co-editor on another campus. So it really does help everybody to sort of be on the same page, literally, because it's a written agreement. It establishes things like, the library is going to host in the journal. We will be responsible for ensuring that the website is always available. We're going to be responsible for doing the layout. But then I also, outline what the publishing partner is going to be responsible for. So they are going to be responsible for the peer review process and managing submissions and all of that kind of stuff. They're going to be responsible for copy editing. That's not something we do. So we have some links here, and hopefully those links will, I don't know that they'll work for you guys to click on if you wanted to go back and watch the recording, but maybe Peja can make the slides available to you as a PDF, so you can click on those and see them. They're in our research commons, in our institutional repository, which is called the Research Commons. So we do have a template that's available, and it's something that I use all the time. It's really helpful. An MOU is really helpful for any kind of project where you're going to have people from maybe one or two departments or even more departments in the library working with people external to the library on a project that's going to entail, a lot of steps and a lot of back and forth. It really does help to do things. Digital humanities projects, I've seen them used for that as well. We use them for our open educational resources publishing as well. Also, I just want to make a note that right now, I showed you guys the journal proposal form. Right now, we don't require book proposal forms. I gather a lot of the same information, but we don't have a competitive process for publishing books at our library, through our library yet. That may be coming in the future at some point, but for right now, people do not have to submit book proposals. So mainly if somebody wants to publish a book with us, I just chat with them about what it is. I make sure it's not something that's, too personal. It should be scholarly. So we're not going to publish a travel log or a memoir, most likely, unless it's somebody really famous or something. But it should really be a scholarly work. That's the main thing I want to make sure of. So we can move forward. And once again. Okay, so in general, publishing platforms can be divided into two categories, which I have on the left. So you have open source platforms and you have commercial platforms. And each type has their advantages and disadvantages. So an open source platform is free, which is wonderful, exclamation point, yay, but it's sometimes free like a puppy, and that it ends up costing a lot more than you thought it would to begin with. Open source platforms give you more control over look and feel, and open source is aligned with library values of not being profit driven. However, open source platforms can often be more expensive in the long term, and they're definitely going to require more time and tech support from library staff. Whereas commercial platforms might be cheaper in the long term if you don't have programmers on staff who can do a lot of the back-end technical support that's needed. They're definitely going to be faster, and oftentimes, most of the time, when you buy a commercial product, you're going to get that tech support included in the cost. However, commercial platforms are not aligned with the library values. Sometimes, not all commercial solutions, but some of them are too focused on profit and not focused enough on sharing information and that kind of thing that we in libraries love. So we can move on. So here are some of the open source platforms that are commonly used. Some of these are commonly used and some of them not quite so commonly. So Pressbooks is one that we use. It is really a great platform for open educational resources as well as books or any kind of long form content. It was built on the WordPress platform. So if you know WordPress, then Pressbooks, the back end, the administrative side of Pressbooks is going to look very familiar to you. Hugh McGuire was the person who really created it, and he's now got a team of folks that work with him. You can either download your own instance and host it locally, or you can pay to have a hosted instance of it, and that's what we've decided to do. But it's pretty simple to use, and we really like it a lot, especially for OER, mainly because it has a lot of capability for multimedia that you can embed within the books that you put on the platform. So it has H5P technology, which is what can allow you to do interactive quizzes and other sorts of things that will really help instructors understand whether their students who are using this open educational resource, whether they're understanding the content and things like that. You could embed, music or video or all kinds of things that you can't do with a flat PDF. So moving on to the next one, Open Journal Systems was developed by the Public Knowledge product. Oh, sorry, not the next slide. The next thing in the list. So Open Journal Systems was developed by the Public Knowledge product, and that is affiliated with Simon Fraser University, and that is what we use to publish our journals. Fulcrum is a really cool product that is also has a lot of multimedia capability, so it's really great for digital humanities projects. That's a relatively new product coming out of the University of Michigan, but quite a few projects have been done with it. I urge you to check them out. Ubiquity Press is kind of a hybrid. It's sort of commercial and sort of open. So it's a commercial platform, but they are dedicated to open access products. So they will not publish anything that's behind a paywall. Brian Hole is the head of that organization, and I just love him. I've talked with him numerous times. He's got a great product. It's actually built on the Open Journal Systems platform, but they've taken it and added some bells and whistles to it, so it looks a lot nicer. And I would love to be able to use that platform at some point. So that's sort of a one that leans a little bit more commercial, that is a great friend to library publishers. A lot of library publishers use Ubiquity. Janeway, and I'll jump to the bottom as well, Vega. Those two are used to publish journals. They're both brand new. Janeway is out of the UK. Vega was developed at West Virginia University by Cheryl Ball, who has since moved to my alma mater, Wayne State, and she took that platform with her. So I have only seen demos of those. They are not in, I don't believe they're even, I don't think Janeway's even in beta yet. I think Vega is in beta, and I think that they're using it to publish a few journals at different places. Manifold is out of the University of Minnesota and mainly is used for books. PubPub is a really interesting product. I saw that demoed recently at the Library Publishing Forum conference. That's out of the MIT Media Lab and the MIT Press. So that can do a lot of different things, books, journals, and more. Scalar is one you might have heard of. Again, it's sort of for digital humanities projects. There are more than what I have listed here. Omeka is another one that is used by a lot of folks wanting to do online exhibits. So there are many different products. Like I said, these are the most common ones. So now we can move to the next slide. So here are some of the other platforms that are used for publishing. Some of them are used for publishing, and a few that I have listed below are also used for IR. They are IR platforms. So the first one is Digital Commons, which you may have heard of bPress. bPress was the creator. It was the Berkeley Electronic Press, was what bPress stood for way back in the day when it was founded. So it came out of the University of California, Berkeley, and became an independent organization. And back in 2017, it was acquired by Elsevier, which sort of turned a lot of folks on their heads. They were really people who use bPress, and it is very commonly used by a lot of publishers and library publishers. A lot of library publishers were very upset by that acquisition. It wasn't handled in the most open way possible. A lot of people had no idea it was coming. And it was announced in a sort of, I don't know, just a very sudden way. And so many library publishers are abandoning the platform and trying to move more towards open source. And in fact, at the last Library Publishing Forum last spring, the pre-conference was titled Owned by the Academy, and it focused on a lot of different open source platforms that people needed to get information about because they wanted to move away from digital commons. Now, having said that, I will also say that there are some library publishers that are very happy with digital commons and are quite content to stay with them. And it seems to be dividing mainly along the lines of university size, although that's not true for everyone. But the smaller the library publisher is, the more likely they are to want to stay with the digital commons product because they just simply don't have the staff to spin up open source platforms on their own. So that's completely understandable, right? That gets back to those advantages and disadvantages from the previous slide where I was talking about that. It really, I'm not making any value judgments here. I'm just reporting on what happened when this acquisition happened. A lot of library publishers were very upset about it, and it has since sort of quieted down a little bit, but there's still a lot of talk from some folks about moving away from digital commons. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about institutional repository platforms. They are publishing platforms in the sense that they host content, but they're not really publishing platforms in the sense like Open Journal Systems is. So, for example, OJS, with that, it handles the submission process, it handles the peer review process, it handles, hosting the content after everything's ready to go. So it's not just a platform where you can just throw PDFs up there. It has on its back end, on its administrative side, it handles the complete process of publishing a journal from submission of a raw manuscript all the way through the final PDF copy. And institutional repository platforms are really just hosting platforms. So they're places where you can upload and host information. And I've got some names here. We use DSpace at my library, but I definitely know folks have used Islandora. At my new library at Emory University, we're going to be using Fedora and Samvera, or they use that now, so I'm going to have to learn a new system. ePrints is another one. I think that's more common in Europe. And then I did want to mention one, Dataverse is a new-ish data repository platform for data sets. So many funders, so like federal funders like the NIH and the NSF and the Department of Education and all of those places where people get a lot of millions and millions of dollars every year to do research, they are requiring the people that they fund, so researchers at universities who receive funding from the federal government and actually also from some foundations, are required to share their research openly. So when they publish a journal article, it has to be published, it has to be made available to the public within a year of publication as open access without people having to pay for it. So the other thing they have to share is their data sets. And that's a relatively new thing that's come along. So now libraries are starting to get into being able to host data sets and help their faculty with that, because most faculty have no idea whatsoever for how to save and publish a data set so that other people can use it. They save their data sets in ways that make sense to them and not necessarily in ways that are going to make sense to other people. So we have a data management, a director of data management services at my library who runs our Dataverse instance, and she helps our faculty get their data sets published. And we'll move on. So some of the journal services that we offer with my publishing program are listed on this slide. I'm not going to read through them all. You guys can take a look at them. But these are the things that we do. We have staff that work on typesetting and layout as well as cover design, although the beautiful cover design on the journal example that you see on the right is actually student artwork. So this journal is edited by one of my colleagues who's a faculty member in our modern languages department. She is the she's also the associate dean of our College of Liberal Arts, and she's the co-editor of the publication of the Afro-Latin American Research Association. And one of her student workers designed this beautiful cover for the next issue that we're getting ready to publish for them. And I see that there is a question in chat. Can you comment on the Research Commons subject linking functions in Digital Commons, the value of that, and if other reports do for that? So I don't know. I've never worked with Digital Commons, so I don't know how the subject linking functions in Digital Commons work. I do know that, so when you say Research Commons, Chuck, are you talking about our institutional repository? Because that is the name of our institutional repository. Do you mean Research Commons in general?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, Research Commons as an idea, not as a brand. Digital Commons has, when you upload a submission, you tag it with subject headings, and then it connects your own institution's research with similarly tagged research in other institutions that are on the Digital Commons platform.
I see. I don't know that other repositories or platforms have that same functionality. That may be something that's unique to Digital Commons. And because they have their platform is proprietary, they don't let people look at the back end of it. They don't let people, you can't look at the source code, right? So if that's proprietary to their platform, then it may not be something that's available. I don't recall ever seeing anything like that on our institutional repository, and that is the one with which I am most familiar.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So we obviously are going to host the software that manages the, like I said, the workflow from article submission and peer review all the way through to the final product. We are just now getting to the point where we finally can assign some DOIs. So we've joined Crossref, which is the organization, the nonprofit organization that manages DOIs. So we are going to soon be able to assign DOIs to our articles. ISSN. DOI assignment is not free, but it's not expensive. ISSN assignment is free. We can definitely help get journals indexed into online databases such as the EBSCO databases or other research databases. We certainly are going to preserve that content because we're a library. And then we offer a lot of technical support for starting that journal. And we can move on. Our book services include many of the same things that we do with journals. So typesetting, layout, cover design. We host the book in our institutional repository, unless it's an open educational resource, and then we're going to host it in the Pressbooks platform. It would be published and hosted in that platform. We get an ISBN for it, which is not free. ISBNs tend to be pretty expensive, but that is something that we consider, part of the services we offer. We help with cataloging and, again, preservation. This is on the right, you see a book that we just published last week from one of our psychology faculty members. You can move on. So outside our scope, I think I've already mentioned a couple of these. Copy editing and proofreading are not something that we provide. We just don't have that staff to do that. Although having done it for as long as I did in my previous career, I'm definitely very adept at finding freelancers. So if somebody needs help finding a professional editorial freelance professional, I can help them with that. We do not do printed copies. So we usually refer to print-on-demand services. Lulu is a good one that's online, but there are many, many others. Amazon also does print-on-demand, so we've used Lulu in the past, however. And we don't really market besides, just having the thing online and ensure that we've got great metadata so that when the different sites are crawled by Google, it makes them very findable. But we don't advertise or do, really proactive marketing. I guess the other thing we usually try to do when we release a new issue of a journal, or if we're going to publish a new book, is we do a press release. Okay, we'll move on. I'm running low on time. All right, so we're getting to the end. So preservation strategies. Since you guys are in the ASSIST group, you probably are aware of some of these, but I thought it would be good at least to touch on them. And this is not my area of expertise, but most of the publishing platforms will have an option that will allow you to turn on locks or somehow engage in the locks preservation network. So locks stands for locks of copies, keep stuff safe. So when you have something preserved through locks, it gives you geographic distribution. Your content is backed up in multiple geographic locations. So if something falls off the face of the earth, then you've got your content in several different places, so you can move on to the next backup. You definitely want to plan for what you will manage. You want to definitely ensure that you've got your metadata preserved and ensure that always migrates when you do have to migrate content. Make sure your metadata migrates properly. Running fire scans and fixity checks is a good idea. And then certainly the last one, to make sure that you're watching as file formats age and migrate as necessary. Digital preservation is a huge topic that I certainly don't have time to even give proper treatment to tonight, but it's one that I'm sure you guys probably in your program, you might have a whole class that you could take on digital preservation. And I think that's about it for that one. I did link some stuff from the University of North Carolina, and that is it. That is my presentation. Again, I have only touched on some very, very big topics, but I'm happy to take any questions. You're welcome to type them in chat if you are shy about talking on a microphone, or you can just unmute yourself and ask me verbally.
I have a quick question for you. This is Peja. So you mentioned earlier in the presentation that oftentimes, or I think maybe even all the times for Mavs Open Press, the faculty, or you'll have like a faculty group or a student group that'll be responsible, like a board for peer review and copy editing. Because there's so much concern nowadays about, when you hear about OA, it's credibility, reliability. Are there ways that your publishing services sort of monitor the quality, or are they completely responsible for that?
So I would say it varies. And honestly, you know, the faculty who publish with us, they want to make sure that they are publishing good, high quality research, and they're going to ensure that the peer review process is rigorous for those articles that undergo peer review. Now, you know, there are always a lot of articles or some content in any journal that's not going to undergo peer review. That's usually opinion pieces. You know, with that journal I showed you the cover of for Polara, that journal, they have usually a note from the editors. They'll have book reviews. They'll have tributes to people who have passed away or different things like that that may not, it's not research, so it doesn't undergo peer review. But for those things that do undergo peer review, the faculty are very interested in ensuring that that peer review process is handled properly. With open journal systems, you have the choice of doing blind, double blind, or open peer review. Now for our journals, we publish a couple of titles with student organizations. So we have one with the English Graduate Student Association and one with our doctoral students in the Transatlantic History program. They are, they're doing peer review on theirs as well, but that's not something we monitor terribly closely. In fact, we sort of set up their sites and they pretty much do things on their own. We really don't intervene much with them. We provide technical support and that's about it. We have another journal that's more, I would say, creative work. So poetry, essays, things like that. That's not peer reviewed. So it varies highly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of the reason that open access publishing has gotten a bad rap is because we had so many bad actors enter the field, basically. So, you know, open access publishing operates on a different business model. It's either supported by an institution like the work we do. It's completely underwritten by the libraries. So we undertake the cost, any costs that may be associated with the platforms we use and the products we use, plus the library pays our salaries for those of us who are involved in publishing. And I noticed there's a question. Yes. So yes, to get to Geraldine's question in chat, the library staff does do this work related to publishing. So everything that's outlined in a memorandum of understanding that I say that the library is going to do, that is done by library staff. So my time is paid for. Our open education librarian who works to publish open educational resources with our faculty, her salary. Our library publishing specialist who's a paraprofessional who does all of our layout. We're going to be hiring a digital publishing librarian who's, all four of those salaries are paid by the libraries. So I think that, let me get back to my original point of saying that that's our business model. The library sponsors all of this work and pays for all of it. And we do it because we really believe strongly in the importance of open access. However, some open access publishers don't have that business model. They are in it, and frankly, a lot of the for-profit publishers are now publishing open access journals because they realize they could make just as much, if not more money off of that, because the way that their business model works is rather than it being a subscription-based business model where the reader or the library pays to have access to the journal, in open access for profit publishing, the authors pay. So in order to have an article published in an open access journal that Elsevier or Wiley or Taylor and Francis publish, you might pay anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 for one article to have that article published. So because that business model exists with those corporations, some bad actors have gotten onto the scene, and some unscrupulous people have sort of said, oh, I'm going to publish a journal, and it's not really even a journal, and this is called predatory publishing. You may have heard of that. And that's basically where, people publish a scam journal, and they take authors money to do so, and it's not really a reputable journal, and it's not really undergoing peer review, and it's very unfortunate that this has happened within the open access space. But that's why so many people might not have the best opinion of open access publishing.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for clarifying that. I feel like something really clicked in my mind when you explained that, just that it's a different business model, and for, MABS Open Press, every journal has a different way that they publish. Sometimes faculty will be monitoring it, sometimes it'll be published by the students themselves, so it kind of depends on the journal itself too. But it makes a lot of sense the way you explain that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And just getting back to Geraldine's question, I will also clarify that, every library does things differently. So for library publishing services, so at my library, we are able to offer a lot of staff support. At other libraries, that's not the case, and that's why many people will turn to a product like Digital Commons, which is the one that was originally created by B Press, but B Press was acquired by Elsevier. So Digital Commons, as I understand it, now again, I haven't used it, and I haven't worked at a library that had it, but I've definitely talked to a lot of people who use it, and they absolutely love it. The people who use it adore it because it makes their lives incredibly simple. They have amazing customer support and tech support. And as I understand it, if you want to publish a journal on Digital Commons, basically all you have to do is give them a Word manuscript, and they will take it and make it absolutely beautiful and host it online for you. Now, I don't believe, and I could be wrong, and if one of you guys knows more about Digital Commons than I do, you can please jump in, but I don't believe that Digital Commons has the infrastructure to handle your peer review. So, that's the beauty of a product like Open Journal Systems, where, it's Open Journals System, not plural systems, where, you can do all of that peer review process within the platform, within the software, and you don't have to worry about version control or people having to email files back and forth, which can be really problematic, for the editors, for the authors, for the reviewers, and the editors have to keep track of which reviewer has what, and it can just be, if you can imagine, trying to publish a journal issue and you've got 10 articles out for review to 3 different reviewers for each article. You've got 30 different people reviewing. You've got to email those people. I mean, it just gets nuts, right? So ensuring that, if that whole process can take place within a software platform rather than just through email, it certainly is a lot more helpful.
We see we have another question here.
Mm-hmm.
If you've had any traction in having library publishing connected to tenure for faculty.
So that's a really great question, Chuck. And I think that you've really hit the nail on the head, because everything in publishing and in scholarly communications is so closely related to tenure and promotion for faculty. So I have definitely come to the conclusion after working very closely. I mean, I've been a librarian for almost 10 years now, and I've been working in scholarly communications, strictly scholarly and only scholarly communications, for 3 years now, and I have definitely come to the conclusion that open access publishing is not going to truly take off until tenure and promotion guidelines reward people for open access publishing, or at least don't punish faculty members. So having said that, I can tell you that there is a really interesting research going on in the Scholarly Communications Lab that is associated with Simon Fraser University, and they're basically going out and looking at how many, they're sampling, they're basically doing a digital humanities project. They're doing text mining of tenure and promotion policies from all over North America, so the US and Canada, in different types of institutions. So looking at anything from community colleges all the way up to R1s to, research one institutions, and looking at tenure and promotion policies and seeing how, what they talk about in regards to publishing, what they're looking for in publishing, whether they even mention open access publishing, and most of them don't even mention it. So it's really something that's going to have to change. And I would have to say, right as of right now, if you mean by having any traction, like would a journal published by my library publishing program be considered something that would be, I guess what I'm trying to say is, would a journal published by the Mavs Open Press be something that a faculty member would be able to put on their resume or their CV and say, this would give them a leg up toward tenure and promotion? I kind of doubt it. We're not a high value or a high visibility publisher, right? We're not like the American Chemical Society or Oxford University Press or any of the other big university presses, much less any of the large multinational conglomerate corporate publishers. We don't have that kind of clout. But what we can do is offer really good services for small research societies or smaller journals that can't afford to pay Elsevier or Wiley or Taylor and Francis or some of the other commercial folks the kind of money that they require to publish a journal. So that's the big selling point that we have, is that we don't charge for our services.
Can I ask a related question?
Sure.
Yeah. So it seems to me like what needs to happen, and I don't know how this can happen, but what needs to happen is that there needs to be a big institution where the provost says, we're going to flip this over and we're going to start looking at the metrics for your downloads and the relinks for your research and all of that stuff, and starting to quantify that as being equivalent to being published in some peer-reviewed journal or
right.
that kind of thing. Are you aware of anywhere where that has happened yet?
So I think it's starting to happen slowly, and frankly, you guys in California are way ahead of the curve as far as the rest of the country is concerned. You all, University of California, definitely that whole system has done amazing work as far as open access policies are concerned, as far as requiring, sharing of openly sharing research results as well as data sets from state grants, things like that. I don't know of any institution that explicitly says we will reward open access journal articles in exactly the same way that we reward traditional subscription-based journal articles. In other words, we don't care whether it's open access or not. That is the ultimate goal, right? And the ultimate goal also is to get to the point where in tenure and promotion, what tenure and promotion committees are looking at is not impact factors. And that is what they look at now, which is ridiculous, because the impact factor of a journal has nothing to do with how impactful a given article was. It is only the average number of citations that a given journal receives in a given year. A given article in a given journal receives in a given year. That is an impact factor. So if I publish an issue of a journal and one of the articles is incredibly groundbreaking and really, makes a huge impact in that field, and it's going to say it gets 100 citations, and all of the rest of the articles in that journal only get 1 or 2, they're all on average. If there's 10, if I publish 10 articles that year, they're all going to have an average of 10. That's going to be an impact factor of 10, which is not what all of the articles, they didn't all have that impact, right? So impact factor is most often used in tenure and promotion because it's easy and it's been around forever and people rely on it overly. So we really need, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people, and this isn't just open access advocates, it's everybody that I know of who's really looked at the issue. We need to be looking at article level metrics.
So we got to move on. Real quick though, I wanted to mention, you mentioned the UC system and OA, and right now, interestingly, it's related to what you were asking, Chuck, too. I'm working on an open access project where the biomedical faculty at UC San Diego, it's a hugely funded faculty group because of Scripps and the hospital and a lot of the biomedical research that's done there with the pharmaceutical staff faculty. And because author processing charges have gotten so high for the faculty, the Scholarly Communications Journal went to the chair and asked if they would be open to participating in this project where they could find open access alternatives that had some sort of comparable impact factor, whether it's alt metrics or that's where that gets kind of complicated with how to gauge that impact. But they were open to that idea, and that sort of is a foot in, hopefully, to having that department be receptive to open access publishing for something like tenure. So that's sort of an approach that one of the UCs has taken, which is interesting.
And I think that a lot of the more forward-thinking universities are going to start moving in that direction. Mm-hmm. It has to happen. It's just the way that many tenure and promotion committees work now is they still just look at the impact factor, and that just doesn't fly anymore. Mm-hmm. So I thank you for offering that other bit of information, Paisha. I think that's really interesting, and I'm definitely really excited about what we will hopefully see in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. Were there any more questions?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it'll have to be brief, but if anyone has a short question, feel free to ask it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me today, Paisha. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks you guys for attending.
Yes. Jody, feel free to hop off now. This is just for the students. But yes, Jody, thank you so much. That was great. Thank you for attending and being our speaker. So ways to get involved with and connect with ASIST. We would love if you could fill out this survey. The link is provided on this slide here, and this sort of gives us a sense of what you would like the webinars to cover. You can also find out more about ASIST on our website. That's also linked here. On that website, you can find information about our upcoming webinars. In November, we have a collaborative webinar with all the rest of the student chapters on how to get involved with the professional associations, and we're going to have guest speakers from a member of each of the student chapter organizations. That's going to be guests on that webinar. We also have a digital asset management certificate webinar on November 28th. The San Jose State University MLS and MARA students who are special session have the option of getting a what they call a DAM certificate, and so this webinar is going to go over what that is and what courses you have to take and what it can be used for. Also, ASIST is recruiting for 3 positions currently for the executive committee, starting in the spring of 2019. We're recruiting for a membership director, programming director, which is what I currently do, so this sort of hosting webinars and things, and also a vice chair. You can find out more about that also on our website under the SJSU ASIST blog tab. That's where we post all of our sort of current things that are going on, and you can access that on the website. Does anyone have any questions about any of this? Alrighty, well, that's it for this webinar. Don't forget to take our survey. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope to see you next time. Have a good night.